Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm your host, Corey Graham. Join us here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where the independent new authors come first. Now, one of my hobbies when I'm not at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable is I like to dabble in music. So this next book really interests me. It's titled Legacy Song. It's written by Robert D. Adams, and we're finding out more about it. Robert is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Bob, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you very much for letting me join you.
Absolutely. I'm interested in Legacy Song and what this is all about, Bob. Can you tell me about it?
It's a cowboy book with some historic references in it. It's about two boys from southern Indiana that grew up dirt poor. The only thing their parents had to give them was a little bit of a lot of music and a little bit of faith, because they were too far from anywhere to go to church or anything. But these kids grew up on music, and that was the legacy that their parents gave them. And it's about, after the parents die, what the good people around them. I mean, cowboy books always seem to be about good guy, bad guy, but this is a lot more about the good guys who speak into these two boys' lives and help them to grow in their faith and in their music. And it kind of takes them places they never thought they might go.
Bob, what sorts of readers do you think would be really into it?
You know, I saw that question on the list, and that was my least favorite question of all the ones you sent me, because I'm not real sure what might be the target reader. I mean, of course, those who like cowboys and you who like music, those who might like to have some fictional story that's faith-based, or it could be somebody who likes a good love story, because there's a pretty good love story in this one, too. So, boy, I'm not really sure how to answer that one. So a little bit of everybody, and who knows.
So how did this all come about, Bob? Where did this idea come from?
Yeah, I love that question. So my wife is from Nebraska, and we live in Indiana. We were driving home one August day, and one of the things I've always loved about Nebraska and Kansas and the plains was the skies always look so big. And my wife was spelling me driving, and I'm sitting in the passenger seat just admiring this big sky. The bean fields had the breeze blowing through it, and it was just so gorgeous. And just out of the blue, I have to do this, obviously, in a deep cowboy-type voice. I said, "Leon sitting at the fire when three riders come in from the north." And my wife giggled and, "Where are you going with that?" I said, "I really don't know." When we got to my mother-in-law's house, I sat down with my computer, and I took that thought and started out with Leon slips his size 12 boot into the stirrup. And all I know is it just kept going. So it just kind of wrote itself. I was kind of enjoying the journey myself, because I didn't know from one chapter to the next what was going to happen.
So is this your first published work then?
It is. Yes, it is.
Congratulations. Was this a long journey then overall, the writing and publishing end and everything?
Yeah, it has been a long journey, but you know what? Every new step is unexpected. Just like each chapter, I didn't know what to expect. Just getting to the point, I printed some local for, some local folks. They all loved it, kept encouraging me. I thought, I'm not a real writer. It's not what I do. And they said, send it in. And, when Christian Faith Publishing says, we love it, we want to publish it, I was as shocked probably as anybody. And it's a journey. What's next? I don't know. I'll just keep going where the journey takes me.
So there's nothing like that finished product when it's finally a real thing. So when you got your first copy or holding it in your hands, Bob, what was that like for you?
A little surreal, I suppose. It's like, all right, I'm here. What's next? And I think probably the feeling I was having is, oh, Lord, sure hope that somebody wants to buy this. I don't know. The people who read it loved it, but will there be enough other people that would make it worthwhile? Then I know my wife asked me once, what is it you hope to achieve out of this book? And I said, obviously I'd love to sell lots and lots of books. Who wouldn't? But I said, this has a faith base to it. a Christian faith base to it that I said, if even just one person buys it and that person accepts Christ for the first time, I would say this book was a success. Of course, the problem with that is I may never know this person, never know that happens or not. But again, when I got it for the first time and looked at it, it was like, all right, there's the next step in this journey. Where are you taking me, Lord?
Well, again, this book is titled Legacy's Song. It's written by Robert D. Adams, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and available pretty much everywhere, like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Bob, it's been great talking with you tonight. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Well, I appreciate the call and the chance to visit with you, Corey.
This book is a powerful testament to faith, healing, and overcoming past trauma. It's the new book written by Kathy Costello. It's titled Meet the Woman at the Well. And Kathy is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and we get to talk all about this. Kathy, welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
Oh, thank you for having me.
It's really nice to be speaking with you, Kathy. I'm curious about Meet the Woman at the Well. Can you tell me about it?
Well, the book is actually about my testimony growing up as a minister's daughter. Throughout my childhood, spiritual abuse was something that my father used against me to make me see God as a punisher. Growing up, I actually thought that God could stop loving me anytime he wanted to if I was not good, if I didn't do everything correctly. But as I look back on my life after a lot had happened in over 60 years of my life, I found out that there was moments where when I felt unloved, he pulled me closer and he was really protecting me and held me throughout my life. But it took my looking back to finally see that.
Kathy, what kinds of readers did you have in mind?
Well, I've been in the ministry off and on for years, and I hear so many times about kids that are being bullied and women. I meet and see women a lot these days that suffer with shame and depression and anxiety. I used to run some Taco Bells many years ago, and I remembered a teenager coming to me and pouring out her purse on her front car seat. And there must have been at least 5 pill bottles that were all for anxiety and depression. And this was just a teenager. And now I found myself in my 60s in the same position on 9 different medications for pain and not being able to sleep and anxiety and depression after a lot of loss in my life. And those are the people that I want to reach because I have found out how to let God renew my mind.
So how did this all come about, Kathy? What was that spark that made you say, hey, I want to sit down and get started on this book?
Well, it took a lot at first. I found a church that believed in emotional healing and physical healing, and I was actually delivered of the multiple sclerosis.
Oh, wow.
And all the different effects from that. I went forward one night when they called for healing, and the next day I noticed a lot of my symptoms were just not there. I wasn't shaking anymore. I didn't have vertigo like I had. Lots of different things that I discuss in my book, but which I was also on medication for all of those different symptoms. And because they were going away, I started coming off of all that medication. That's when things started coming back to me, and I was realizing that my perception of God was the way that I was shown him in my childhood as a punisher. And now I'm learning and loving a loving God who wants me to be healthy and wants me to be whole. So after my father passed away back in 2013, I had started to have night terrors and bad dreams. And then a year later, I lost my son, and I just felt completely lost and alone. And when I found this church, who also believed in emotional healing, I started taking some courses that they had. I had always thought that having a counselor was something that was a waste of time and a waste of money, but I found a Christian counselor who helped me through all of this process. And then just finding a more powerful relationship and personal relationship with God is what really inspired this book.
What a wonderful book this is. Again, it's titled Meet the Woman at the Well. This is written by Kathy Costello, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and available at places like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Kathy, it has been really wonderful talking with you tonight and learning about your story and about Meet the Woman at the Well. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you very much.
The new book by Seth Hunt is a thrilling end times battle of faith and resistance. It's titled Tribulation Revolution. The author, Seth, is here with me. Seth, welcome to the show. I appreciate you joining me tonight.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Well, it's great to be talking with you, and I'm excited to learn all about Tribulation Revolution, Seth. Can you tell me all about it?
Sure. As you may already know, it's a battle in the end times as one man stands against the darkness of evil.
And so what sorts of readers did you have in mind for this, Seth?
A target reading audience, the victims of Christian persecution, because they have experienced tribulation due to holding on to their faith in Jesus. You know, as in the people in different countries, or they are persecuted and sometimes killed for their faith.
So, Seth, how did the idea for this come about? What was that spark that made you want to get started on it?
Well, first to understand, it was what it first started out as, and then you have to do with the anger against Satan himself. You see, most of my life, I've experienced my own trials and tribulations, such as autism, making it difficult to talk publicly. So I'm divorced from my own parents, especially with him. I'm living about, 100 miles away. It's been difficult. I've been using that trauma and anger and frustration as fuel and inspiration as a battle against Satan.
So, Seth, before this, have you ever been published or have you ever written much?
No. There was that time I'm on English class where I had to write a part of a play. Instead of reading just one part, I write the whole play. It was mainly about, well, as you may guess, it's me versus Satan.
So once you got started with Tribulation Revolution, Seth, how long of a writing process was this for you?
Well, my best exactly, maybe 3 or 4 years. Yeah, that's the best count. What got me started, as I said before, it was mainly a way, I guess you can say, a therapeutic way to release some anger against the devil, but over time it became something more. It was as if God was giving me instructions. He was reading the story to me before I even wrote it down, or typed it down to be more exact.
So after all the time and the hard work that you put into this, Seth, whenever you got to hold your first copy for that first time, what was that moment like for you?
I'd say I was proud.
So now that you're officially published, Seth, what would you say is the most rewarding aspect of it all for you?
I say that I started getting to know throughout the world, or in this small case, just Kentucky. That's a start. I guess the best thing known, I'm getting a chance to spread God's message, His word, through my book, and that's a greater privilege than any other.
So do you see yourself writing and publishing more in the future?
Oh, yes. I definitely plan on writing more. I already have another book being written, but it's still going to take some time.
So, Seth, we have a lot of people listening right now who are authors who are also just starting out and everything. Do you have some advice that you could offer them?
Yes. If you have no way to start your book, ask God to give you the start. Let your creative mind flow through you as a river. Let no one judge you for your own ideas for your book. And most importantly, give God thanks for the talent He has given you.
Seth, I'm looking at it right now, and I love the cover to this. This is a beautiful cover on Tribulation Revolution. How did that all come together?
As for the cover, well, that just means something I found online. If it was personally up to me, I would have drawn them with me with a hidden blade against a follower of the enemy is my neck. But I say the one that I picked online was a perfect match.
Seth, something that I've noticed talking with a lot of authors here over the years is that a lot of them also love to read. Does that describe you? Are you a big reader?
Comes to comics or just graphic novels, yeah. As in chapter books, not much, unless I count my own.
Well, it sounds like a book that I think that a lot of readers will love. Again, it's titled Tribulation Revolution. This is written by Seth Hunt, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and really available pretty much everywhere, like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Seth, thank you again for coming on the show and talking with me all about Tribulation Revolution. It was great talking with you.
And it was great to be here and talking with you about it.
The audiobook edition of Teniecka Drake's book, The Gift of Finding God's Love, Guilt and Shame Turned into My Shine. It just came out, and we get to talk all about it right now because Teniecka is here with me at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Teniecka, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Teniecka, can you tell me all about what readers and audiobook listeners are in for with The Gift of Finding God's Love?
Absolutely. Well, this book is a little bit of a biography of me going through domestic violence and coming out of it and finding the Lord and his goodness through that. So along with my story are some poems that I wrote as I was sitting in California overlooking the ocean at Point Fermin Park. And 3 of those poems that will be in that book, that's where they came from.
What made you decide to write this and get the poetry published?
Well, it was a little bit of not me even thinking about a book. The book was never a thing I wanted to do. I was searching for something to do for myself in entrepreneurship, something. So I had a business coach that I was working with, and I had asked her, I was like, I need to do something. She's like, well, why don't you write your story? I was like, about domestic violence? Who wants to read about that? She's like, you'd be surprised. I was like, okay. So she gave me an assignment. She's like, I want you to write a page for me of your book. Just write a whole page. And so I was like, okay. I did her assignment. I said, okay, I've written this first page. She's like, okay, there's a start of your book. She's like, now it's up to you to complete it. I just wanted you to start the first page. That has nothing to do with me. So if you complete it, you do. If you don't, that's on you. So she's like, it's up to you to complete the book. And that's how it got started.
So once you got started and clear up through when it was published and everything, Teniecka, was this a long journey that you were on overall?
It was absolutely a long journey because as I was going through writing this book, there was a lot of things happening at the same time. So I was living with my family. I found myself homeless. As I'm writing this book, I'm going through the transitional housing, living at my parents, not living there, having a curfew, and at the same time not having a place to go because I didn't have a job. So all these things are pulling on me at the same time while I'm trying to still work with my kids and work and bring this to fruition. So sometimes I'd be up at 3:00 in the morning by moonlight on the floor writing something. And then when I get up early enough to go over to the transitional housing, because you did have a curfew, I would use their little resource center, type it up there. And then back and forth, I went from Long Beach to San Pedro, and just it was a continuous thing until it finally got finished. But I would take my little time, and just every moment I was finding a little bit of time to, okay, let me write this little bit on here. Okay, well, I have to go do this. I have to go meet these things. I have to go find some food. I have to go to the food bank. So all of that while I was writing this book.
So what sorts of readers do you think that this is best for?
Well, I think it's best for any reader who thinks in their life they can't get out of, first of all, domestic violence. That's for one group. If you think you cannot get out of domestic violence at all, I am a living testament that yes, you can. And it's, again, for another group of people that think there's no way I can get out of this situation because it's too dark, too black. There's no way I'm getting out of the situation. My bills are bad. I can't get out. I'm living with my family. I'm displaced. All the things that would be pressing on them, it's also a book for them. And then it's for anybody else who just needs some inspiration. Like if she can get through all of those things, surely I can get through my own challenges and I can come out on the other side.
Yeah, we're talking about the audiobook edition. And so was it difficult for you to find just that right voice that you wanted?
The audiobook was also, for me, when I'm doing all the things, the audiobook didn't know I would have to be doing the audition. And I didn't know I had to listen to people audition to showcase and share about that. So they gave me a certain amount of people. They said, now listen to all of them, and then you give us the person that you want. So I listened to all these different people. I was like, wow, there's so many. And so when I finally selected the voice that I thought would be indicative of how I wanted to come across, I said, okay, this is the person. But they had a lot of people that I had to go through. I was like, oh, these are really people auditioning to speak for my book.
Again, this audiobook is titled The Gift of Finding God's Love, Guilt and Shame Turned into My Shine. This is written by Teniecka Drake and published by the Audiobook Network, so go on over to Audible or iTunes or Amazon and you'll be able to pick it up. Teniecka, thank you again for coming on the show and telling me all about this. It was really nice chatting with you.
Thank you so much once again for having me here. It's been a pleasure.
My Passion in Pursuit of God. It's the name of the new book written by Cornel Bedward, and it's a spiritual memoir and a guide to faith. And that's what we're going to be talking about. Cornel is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Cornel, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
You're welcome. I'm a pleasure to be here.
It's great to be talking with you, and I'm anxious to learn all about My Passion in Pursuit of God. Can you tell me all about it?
Sure. My book is called A Passion in Pursuit of God. It's the time I spent writing this book that helped me to understand God's love for us. As I wrote the book, it allowed me to draw closer to God, to establish a more meaningful relationship with Him. Writing the book was a pleasure. God taught me about His love and His plan for our future. I am satisfied and grateful when I consider God's interest in our well-being. Also, I believe that God's love for all humanity is fixed in eternity as He now reaches down from heaven to save us, especially in our worst time.
What sorts of readers did you have in mind for this, Cornel?
So my target reader is for anyone who has an interest in searching to find God, to understand who God is, to be able to relate to Him by faith, and to also to grow and establish a trusting relationship with Him.
Cornel, how did this book come about? What gave you the idea to start it?
So as a child growing up, I learned about God's love from my parents. I saw the passion in them. It transformed my life. It proved a better reality to live up to. It was God's love that brought me through many obstacles. It was His love that made me aware of His Holy Spirit and His presence around me. I have developed a spiritual relationship with God that was impactful and thoughtful, and I know it will last throughout eternity. In the book, I pointed how God's love is evident in our lives. When we look back through our biblical history, we can see God's impact on the lives of those He calls out for His purpose. God uses their lives as an example for us to follow and practice in our day. I desire whoever read my book will become into the knowledge of God's love. The book, I hope, will reveal a new insight into God's grace and mercy.
Cornel, is this your first published work, or have you done things like this before?
I have been writing about these things for many, many years. I have been doing research into a lot of things that did not make sense to me before, but came together after I began to understand what God love is all about. And watching the track throughout history of how He presents Himself in the lives of the people that He came into contact with led me up to this point where I decided, the world needs to understand and know this truth, so I'm going to write it. So that's how the book formalized itself and how it came together.
Cornel, you're a published author. Your work is out there for the world. What would you say is the most rewarding aspect of it all for you?
Well, the most rewarding part is that I am able to trust God. I'm able to rely on His words. I'm able to make the connection between our salvation and how we came about building up a relationship with God. It's very interesting to see how through Jesus Christ we are able to pull it all together with hope and understand the grace and mercy of God. And that has been a big part of it for me.
So a lot of time, a lot of work went into this. So when you were finally holding your first copy of My Passion in Pursuit of God, and it was finally a real thing, Cornel, what was that moment like for you?
It was like a great feeling spiritually that I am feeling as if God say to me, yes, you see, I told you, if you write it, I will make it happen. And this was always in my mind as I went through the long years in the research and brought it together. It was a time that brought a lot of satisfaction to me.
Well, what a blessing this book is going to be to so many readers. Again, it's titled My Passion in Pursuit of God. It's written by Cornel Bedward, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and Available pretty much everywhere, like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, iTunes, and traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Oh, Cornel, thank you again for coming on the show. It's been really great talking with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys. Have a good day.
The new fantasy novel written by Garrett Skinner. It's titled Waking Nightmares. That's what we're going to talk about right now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. The author, Garrett, is here with me. Garrett, welcome to the show. I appreciate you joining me.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate being here.
Absolutely. Garrett, can you tell me all about Waking Nightmares and what readers are going to get into here?
Right, so Waking Nightmares is my first delve into a fantasy series. I've started. The series itself is titled Sunder, of which it takes place in the world of Sunder. The book itself it follows the point of view of four distinct characters: Violet, Virgil, Scarlet, Rodrigue. So Sunder Waking Nightmares takes place over the POV of the four characters: Rodrigue, Virgil, Scarlet, and Violet, as well as Astra, a fifth character, an amnesiac, who is kind of somewhat unveiling the hidden story behind the war between the humans and northern race referred to as the Beastmen. And so the story kind of goes through with the war taking place beginning at a place known as Florian's Shield, where there's just a conflict between the Elysian Empire versus the Beastmen army. And beyond it, there's some stirrings referred to as the awakening of a creature known as the Forgotten One. And throughout the book, we just begin to unravel the story. A few twists and turns happen.
So how did the idea for this come about?
It came about in bits and pieces, actually. A lot of it stemmed from, I'm an avid D&D player, and so typically I was kind of writing bits and pieces of a story for a D&D game I was playing. So certain ideas such as Thunder and the Forgotten One kind of hung around from there, and then I developed characters around it, and then sort of the war and the backstory and all of that sort of kind of just evolved naturally from a conflict and, a need to have something to push the story forward.
Now, you said this is your first foray into the fantasy genre. So prior to this, have you been published?
Actually, no. This is not just my first foray into fantasy, but this is my first book in general.
Congratulations. So being your first book, was this a long journey that you were on overall, the writing and then the publishing part and everything?
Yeah, it took a good long while. There was a lot of finding my feet because I wasn't sure where I wanted to stand as an author, how I like to write, that sort of thing, setting the pace, what can happen in the foreground versus the background. So it was a long process of figuring things out, editing, changing, and then the publisher certainly helped out a good deal with that, making things run seamlessly. Yeah, I would say it was a long but enjoyable process.
Once you started working with the publisher, Newman Springs, and you started that publishing process, Garrett, what would you say was the most challenging part of that for you?
Because this was my first book, I would say that the most challenging part was just being nervous about it in general. I was kind of afraid of, getting out there, actually showing people what I've done, say, hey, I've put my heart into this, and then kind of just fearing that people wouldn't enjoy it. And Newman Springs seems to have enjoyed it, and no one so far had nothing bad to say as far as my publishers are concerned.
And then that day finally came, and it was a real thing. You got your first copy in, Garrett. You were holding this in your hands for that first time. What was that like for you?
It was kind of traumatizing because I got my first copy. I got my first couple copies, and, that was the point where I sat there and I looked at it, and I was like, oh, no, my family's going to read this.
So now that you're officially a published author, Garrett, what do you say is the most rewarding aspect of it all for you?
I think that the rewarding part is having sat there and said, I want to try to be an author. I want to do this with my life. And I sat there and I worked it out and I kept writing and I kept going no matter how nervous or scared I might have gotten at certain things or how much I feared that a certain part might not fit. And in the end, I'm just happy that it all came together. I feel like I've really accomplished something with this. And I'm very excited about taking my next steps into being an author.
So you said this is the first in the series. Do you have a certain number of books planned out, or you just kind of go with it as it comes?
I'm shooting for 3 at the moment. If it ends up being more, if it ends up being 2, I'll be happy with it. But the goal is 3 books, making it a trilogy.
Again, the title of the book is Waking Nightmares. It's written by Garrett Skinner and published by Newman Springs Publishing. So find it at places like Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Oh, Garrett, thank you again for coming on the show and telling me all about Waking Nightmares. It was really great talking with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a blast.
The new book by Reagan Chapman is titled Hark and Herald. It's a tale of purpose and faith, and we're going to learn all about it right now. Reagan is right here with me now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. Reagan, welcome. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Hi, thank you for having me.
It's great to have you here, Reagan. I'm curious to learn all about Hark and Herald, so can you tell me all about it?
Yeah, so Hark and Herald is a children's book. It's kind of a play on the song Hark the Herald Angels Sing and the Rudolph story. So Hark and Herald are twin angels, and they're given this gift from God at the very beginning of the story when they're born of having really loud voices. And as they grow up, they just struggle to fit in, struggle to find their purpose. And it's kind of about that journey. And then finally, at the end of the story, they are able to use their gift in the way that it's intended and finally use their purpose.
So would you say this is for younger children, older children, or children of all ages?
I think children of all ages. It's a story that, even though it's a children's book, I think everyone has struggled at some point in their life, even adults, with, knowing what their purpose is and knowing what God wants them here for. And so I think this story just kind of helps illuminate that, shed some light on that. And I wrote it for kids. That way they kind of know that going into adolescence and where, really struggle to find your identity.
So how did this all come about, Reagan? Where did this idea come from?
That's actually really fun. My dad had this idea to take the song and turn it into the Rudolph story from Hark and Herald, being angels. And he basically had the biggest elements, right? Hark and Herald are angels, and they have big voices, and then they come and they save the day at the end of the story. And he was like, he knew I wanted to be a writer. So he said, hey, why don't you write this story? Like, I'm not going to write it, but I have this idea. So take it and run with it and do what you can with it. And so I did. I sat down and I just started writing. And so after he read it, he was like, oh, wow, you kind of went in a little bit of a different direction. I didn't think about these things and how they would work, but I absolutely love what you've done with it. So it was really cool to see how he gave me the initial idea, and it just kind of, blossomed from there.
So this is your first book then?
Yes, it is.
Congratulations. So being your
Thank
first
you.
one, I'm sure there was a lot of territory that you weren't familiar with. So was this a long journey for you overall?
Yeah, it's been a long learning journey for sure. The writing part was honestly the easiest. I wrote it and then, of course, edited, and then, finding a publisher, there was a lot that went into that. And then through the publishing process, it took about a year before the book to come out after I had written it. So it definitely has been a long process, but I've loved every second of it.
And there's nothing like seeing the final product after all that hard work. So what was it like to hold the first copy for that first time?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. I got it and held it and was just able to finally see from the story in my head and the words on the paper to then working with my illustrator and then getting that final copy in my hands. I just couldn't contain the joy. It was so amazing.
Yeah, you mentioned the illustrator, and the illustrations are really important in a book like this. So was that a smooth process?
Yeah, it was. I connected with my illustrator who lives in a totally different country. So working with her and finding someone who could really bring my ideas to life was just absolutely amazing. She did a wonderful job. And yeah, I think the illustrations really complete the book.
So it's official. You're a published author now. So what would you say is the most rewarding aspect of it all for you?
That's a hard question. I think what's the most rewarding is that knowing that I can reach so many people through this story where I couldn't with just maybe telling the story or not having it published. I have the ability now, by the grace of God and through all of this work that I put in with my publisher and everything, that this story that I think has a really good message can reach so many people. And I feel really blessed and really rewarded to be able to have a part in that and have a role in that.
Oh, what a wonderful book. Again, this is titled Hark and Herald. It's written by Reagan Chapman, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and available everywhere, really. Places like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Reagan, it's been so wonderful talking with you tonight and learning all about your work. Thanks again for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Joining me right now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, I'm really happy to be talking with author R.W. Davis. Rich, welcome to the show. I really appreciate you joining me.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
It's nice to be talking with you, and you have a new book out. It's titled, I Was Not Born an Addict. So, Rich, can you tell me what readers are going to be getting into here?
Actually, there's two stories here, and it's pretty much how myself, for instance, grew up in a family of a father an alcoholic, my mother a drug addict. My father's a compulsive gambler as well. It's pretty much how their behavior, I think, affected me as a young boy, how their irresponsibility and neglect of not only myself, but 7 other siblings. I come from 8 children. I'm originally from Brooklyn, New York. The neglect came in ways of education. There was no education reinforced, no boundaries, no discipline in the house, domestic violence. So I think probably by the age 8 or 9, I was totally affected by the domestic violence and my father's addiction. My mom's addiction didn't kick in till later on. It shows pretty much by age 10 how I think at that time I had already made a decision that I can't trust the house that I live in, wasn't safe, and I took to the streets. And then, of course, in the 60s, I'm born in 1954. In the 60s, early to mid-60s, I hit the streets and started doing things like smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol, and I succumbed to peer pressure. So what you're going to be looking at pretty much is how a young boy is affected by what was going on in his home, and how at a very early age I started pretty much self-medicating. I think that's what you're going to see here, a progression of a kid that got lost in the cracks. I wound up being taken away from my family and put into a juvenile correctional facility and called Spofford in the South Bronx of New York. And that was to start off a pattern for the next 10, 12 years. So what you're going to find in this book is the title, I Wasn't Born an Addict, pretty much says it all. I was born into addiction, and I pretty much followed, the footsteps of a man who I never wanted to be like, and wound up being pretty much just like him.
How did the idea to write this come about, Rich? What made you think, hey, I want to write my story and publish it for the world?
Well, I got into a lot of trouble at an early age. When I had come out of this correctional facility, I was sent to a school for, troubled children, and I met a mentor there who at age 11 pretty much took an interest in me, and I had never had a mentor or anybody that I would be able to confide in at all at that age. I was a candle in the wind. I was in and out of trouble and no supervision at home, and this teacher took me under his wing. And for the next 4 months that I spent at this school, which I was pretty much bullied at, he took a great interest in me. And to make a long story short, when I got clean in 1977, that's when my life had begun. I had sort of an awakening. I got clean and I looked up this teacher because I wanted to thank him. And I couldn't find them for the life of me. In 1977, we didn't have what we have available today to find people, no social media like we do. And it just wound up 36 years later, through business, I wound up doing work right next door to this man's home in Long Beach, New York.
Oh, wow.
And that was a 36-year reconciliation that was absolutely amazing. He was the one who said to me one day, coming from a lunch, he said, Rich, you have to write a book. I said, George, I don't know where to put periods, commas, or anything else. I have no idea how to write a book. And when he passed, something deep inside of me woke up and said, I got to do this no matter what.
Well, what an amazing story. Again, the title of the book is I Was Not Born an Addict. It's written by R.W. Davis, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and really available everywhere like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Oh, Rich, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling me about this book and about your story. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me. Absolutely.
Author Haley Keene has written a book that inspires and encourages readers to embrace their faith. It's titled Far More Than a Book, Destinations in Heavenly Places. And I'm really happy that Haley is joining me here right now at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, and we get to talk all about the book. Haley, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Haley, I'm curious about Far More Than a Book. Can you tell me all about it?
Well, Far More Than a Book is about my personal experiences with the Lord. Kind of just guides the readers through a time where I felt like God was showing me things about myself or things about Him and His character or things that needed to be changed in me. And so it's just in each place in the book, I experienced something about Him or about myself.
So what sorts of readers did you have in mind for it?
I don't have a target audience. It's just for anybody who wants to read it and who gets something out of it. I do think females would probably get the most out of it because it is from a female perspective, but I don't have a target audience.
So how did this all come about, Haley? What gave you the idea to sit down and get started on it?
I came home from church one night and just felt like I should write, so I just sat down, and that's how it happened. I just felt like God was showing me some things about Him and myself, and I just wrote down those visions.
So have you ever done anything like this before, or is this all kind of new territory for you?
Oh, this is very new territory for me. I've never done anything like that before.
So once you started on it, clear up through the publishing process and everything, Haley, was this a long journey that you were on?
Yeah. I mean, not the process of writing the book, but as far as since I wrote it to the publishing process. I wrote it probably about 3 to 4 years ago and just held on to it for a while and thought about publishing, but wasn't sure how to go through that process. And then one day, my grandma saw Covenant Books on a commercial, and she was like, "You should check them out." So I did, and that's how that happened.
So once you started working with your publisher, Covenant Books, and you got that publishing process started, Haley, what did you think was the most challenging part about that end of things for you?
I didn't think it was very challenging. It is a long process and something you have to be patient with. I mean, it's not something that just happens overnight. It's something that you've got to be patient with and go through the process. It is fun to go through all those stages and see the book come to life.
And there's nothing like seeing that finished product, and after all that time, finally, you're holding your first copy in your hands, Haley. What kind of a moment was that like for you?
Oh, that was very surreal. Like I said, I wrote it a long time ago, so seeing it actually come together was pretty cool. Seeing the book cover, that was really cool, just the whole finished product. Yeah, it was really cool. There was a time where I didn't know if I was even going to publish the book.
And now it's official, you're a published author, so what would you say is the most rewarding part of it all for you?
The most rewarding part, I think, is just being able to share it with other people.
So looking ahead, do you see yourself writing and maybe publishing more?
I have started some other things. I am pretty slow about the process. I mean, these other ideas that I have are much different. Nothing like the first book at all. So, yeah, I've just been thinking about how to continue them and if I want to publish them, and yeah.
Well, a lot of people who are listening to us right now are authors who are also just starting out in this. So, Haley, do you have maybe something in the way of advice that you could throw out there?
Well, I think that writing is a journey, and it's something that comes from the inside of us, whether we have learned something in life or whether we have something that we want to say. And I think it's just something that you should do when you feel like you have something to share with other people.
So, Haley, who do you have in your life who can keep you maybe encouraged and inspired and motivated, especially when you're doing stuff like this?
Well, I have my mom and the rest of my family, and I have my fiance. They're all great encouragers.
You mentioned the cover, and this is a beautiful cover, Haley. How did that all come together? Was that smooth for you?
Yes, that was smooth. I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I had never published a book before. I didn't know how, that process went about designing a cover. So I was like, well, maybe just do something that's in the book and put it on the cover.
Again, the book is titled Far More Than a Book, Destinations in Heavenly Places. It's written by Haley Keene, published by Covenant Books, and available at places like Amazon and Barnes & Noble and iTunes and also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Well, Haley, it's been really wonderful talking with you tonight. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Sitting down with me now here at the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, author Timothy A. Mills. Timothy, welcome. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Got to say congratulations. You got a new book out. It's titled Tales of a Teamster Preacher, a daily devotional. I'm really interested in this, Timothy. Can you tell me about it?
So for the entire year of 2023, every day of the year, I did one entry to make a 365-day-a-year devotional. Sorry about leap year. We didn't have February 29th that year, so you're going to have to find something else to do that day. But anyway, we got most of it covered. And my idea for this book kind of came from a lot of years just wanting to do it, and it was kind of a last-minute decision. January 1st, 2023, I was like, you know what? I've been thinking about doing this. I'm just going to do it. My main goal for this book, more than anything, is I did not want this to be another daily devotional that somebody reads and they're reading it going, I can't be like this. I can't be this good. This is unattainable, and it makes the gospel sound like it's hard to reach. It's not hard to reach at all. And I think we as flawed humans, we make it harder, and we make it sound harder than it is for people to reach the Lord. And I wanted this to be a down-to-earth devotional just written by a regular guy. I'm a Teamster. I'm not a biblical scholar. I didn't go to college. I didn't sit in seminary. But my faith is what's kept me going all these years, and that's what I wanted to share with the world.
So as far as the readers you were thinking about when you were writing this, Timothy, who would you say those are?
Well, to give you a little bit of history, I have been through the worst of the worst church people in my lifetime. I have been through, hypocritical holy rollers that are basically modern-day Pharisees. Everybody knows these types of people, that they really do a wonderful job at pushing people away from the church altogether. My goal is I want to reach those people who've been hurt by the church. I want to reach those people that are kind of on shaky ground when it comes to their faith. And those ones that see this as maybe something that's a lot harder to do because, again, man has made it sound like it's unattainable. And I wanted to reach out to the misfits, the people that don't feel like they fit in with a church group, the people that don't feel like they're good enough, because I was one of those people at one time. And for me, that's the kind of people we need to reach out to the most.
Timothy, have you been published prior to this?
This is my first one, actually.
Congratulations. So was this a long journey then for you overall, the writing and then the publishing part and everything?
The writing part was, there were days when, most of the time it was a Sunday where I just heard an awesome sermon and the words just went right onto the screen and it was like, there's my entry for the day. And then there was other times where it was like, I sat at my computer and with an open Bible, flipping through, and it might have been like 30 minutes before I even got the first word out because I just had nowhere to go. And, that's kind of that's why we rely on faith anyway when we don't know where to go. So, that was the writing side of it. As far as the publishing side, Christian Faith Publishing did an awesome job at this. And really, as I've told everybody, all I had to do was write, pay, and communicate. That was it. And they took care of the rest.
So, man, when you were holding the first copy for the very first time, Timothy, what was that moment like?
Almost unreal, because I'm thinking, here's something that I made, that I did, but for me, it's kind of humbling because it's like, I don't take credit for this book at all. I give all the glory to God for this, first and foremost, and I give a lot of credit to the people that influenced me to write this book. And those people weren't all good. I mean, there's a lot of people and a lot of stories that I wrote about that, came from people that were not so good, and, kind of dealing with that as a believer and, navigating through that in a way that's, you don't want to push somebody away. You want to be faithful to the Lord, but sometimes you can't reach everybody, and sometimes people aren't going to like you. And it's how you deal with that as a believer instead of just lashing out in anger or doing what the world says you should do when it comes to that.
Well, this is a book that is definitely needed out there. Again, it's titled Tales of a Teamster Preacher, a daily devotional. It's written by Timothy A. Mills, published by Christian Faith Publishing, and available at places like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, iTunes, also traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Timothy, it's been really great talking with you tonight. Thanks again for coming on the show with me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, and it's been a pleasure to share my story with you.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. We hope to see you back here every Friday night at 8 p.m. or listen anytime via podcast at Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, to name just a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.